evening, being that it's 7 p.m., we'll call the meeting to order. Michelle, can you please read the sunshine law?
Let the minutes show that adequate notice of this meeting as required by Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, has been provided by the annual notice which has been posted on the bulletin boards, filed with the Borough Clerk, and has been sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Independent, the Star Ledger, and the Two River Times.
Thank you. Can we please have a roll call?
Mayor Kennedy.
Here.
Council President Good.
Here.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Here.
Councilmember Patopoulos.
Here.
Councilmember McDermott.
Here.
Councilmember Davidson.
Here.
Councilmember McNamara.
Here.
Thank you.
Everyone can please join me in saying the flag.
This is the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone can please remain standing for a moment of silence if you're choosing. Thank you. As a reminder, those that have been back to the in-person as well as the new people that are here this evening, because of the setup of the dais now, the microphones go all the way down to the end, so they're very sensitive and they pick up all the noise in the council chambers. So if you have any private conversations, if you could please take them outside so they're not picked up on the recording that the clerk needs to play back for taking minutes. Thank you. We have two proclamations this evening. The first is Fire Prevention Proclamation. Learn the sounds of fire safety. Whereas Fire Prevention Week is recognized from October 3rd through October 9th and seeks to better educate the public about the sounds of smoke alarms, what they mean, and how to respond to them. Whereas 41% of household fire deaths occur in homes with no smoke alarms, or 16% in homes with alarms that fail to activate. The number one cause of home fires is unattended cooking. Whereas smoke alarms detect smoke before you can, alerting you to danger in the event of fire in which you have as little as 2 minutes to escape safely. When a smoke alarm or carbon monoxide alarm sounds, respond immediately by exiting the home as quickly as possible. Whereas carbon monoxide is the number one cause of accidental poisoning in the United States. It is an odorless, colorless gas that displaces oxygen in your body and can cause you to become unconscious. Whereas choosing the right smoke and carbon monoxide alarms are vital. The alarm should be listed with a testing laboratory, meaning that it has met certain standards. For the best protection, use a combination smoke and carbon monoxide alarm, as well as having a fire extinguisher in your home. Alarms should be installed on every level and in every sleeping area. If someone is deaf or hard of hearing, install a bed shaker and strobe light alarm. Whereas if your alarm begins to chirp, it may mean the batteries are running low and need to be replaced. If the alarm continues to chirp after the batteries are replaced, or the alarm is more than 10 years old, it is time to replace the alarm. Know the difference between the sound of a smoke alarm and a carbon monoxide alarm. 3 beeps for smoke alarms and 4 beeps for carbon monoxide alarms. Now therefore, the Borough of Keyport does proclaim Fire Prevention Week from October 3rd through October 9th. As the Mayor of the Borough of Keyport, I also call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in the Borough of Keyport to educate themselves about fire prevention and the sounds of the alarms. For additional information on fire prevention, please contact our local fire marshal. With that, I would also like to just take a brief moment to say why we have an amazing Keyport Fire Department made of all volunteers here in the Borough of Keyport. I also want to take a moment to commend our fire marshal and fire bureau upstairs, who make sure that they have everyone adhering to all protocols when they issue COs and so forth, and they don't make exceptions to that, which helps keep our fire ratings down. Next, we have a proclamation for Italian American Heritage Month. As you know, this year we focused heavily on acknowledging the different cultures among our community, and we have continued to acknowledge each of the Heritage Months all year. So this month is Italian American Heritage Month. And whereas the word America originated due to Amerigo Vespucci's exploring between 1499 and 1502. And whereas between 1880 and 1930, more than 4 million Italians migrated to the United States, fleeing poverty and seeking economic opportunities that they could not find at home. Today, there are an estimated 26 million Americans of Italian descent living in the United States, making them the 7th largest ethnic group. More than 1.45 million call New Jersey home. Whereas Italian immigrants helped provide the labor for American factories and mines. They helped build roads, dams, tunnels, and other infrastructures. They were responsible for major breakthroughs in engineering, medicine, and science. Italian Americans founded many successful businesses, including Barnes & Noble, Tropicana Products, Subway, Mr. Coffee, and Conair Corporation. And whereas Italian Americans are famous for the contributions of the worlds of art, architecture, fashion, and opera. Whereas Italian cooking in the United States has come to mean Southern Italian, especially Neapolitan cuisine, sorry, I was thinking dessert, sorry, which is rich in tomato sauces, heavily spiced, and pasta-based. Big plates of spaghetti and meatballs, baked ziti, and chicken parmesan are not common in Italy, but they reflect the unique Italian-American culture. Whereas pasta was a luxury to peasants and meat was typically consumed 2 or 3 times a year and only on special holidays. Many immigrants planted small backyard gardens to supplement the table, and outdoor brick ovens were common. In America, no one starves, though a family earned no more than $5 or $6 a week. Whereas, still today, work, family, and sitting down to have meals together are still the heart of Italian society. Now, therefore, the Borough of Keyport does hereby proclaim October as Italian American Heritage Month, and as the Mayor of the Borough of Keyport, I also call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in the Borough of Keyport to honor the achievements and contributions of Italian Americans. Before we open the meeting to the public, there are a couple items I would like to go over, and then I'll ask council members if they have anything. But first is just a clarification. Mr. Delaney is going to go over 20621. As some of you are aware, that was this is regarding a CBDG grant that we received in 2019, I believe, Trevor. I know some of the paperwork says 2018. For $162,000 to assist in handicap ramps on the sidewalks, on the corners on Broad Street between Monroe and Maple. Additionally, there was a bond taken out last year for $500,000 to assist in different sidewalks, but I believe that project is not moving forward. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor. The original concept, as I understand it, was initiated with the submission of an application for Community Development Block Grant, that's CDBG funding, which are federal funds administered through the Monmouth County Planning Office. The borough was successful in obtaining a partial grant in the amount of $162,000 for those handicap access improvements, including curbs and sidewalks. That project was expanded, or maybe more correctly, was supplemented with municipal funding intending to reconstruct the entire streetscape from, or most of the streetscape from, the targeted area was Broad Street from Route 36 to basically Maple Place, which, by the way, Broad Street is a county road. This was also to be done in conjunction with the planned repaving of that roadway by Monmouth County. That project by the county had been put on hold pending the completion of the borough's work. As we move forward with that project, we've identified, and this will sound somewhat reminiscent of some other projects we've recently encountered, that there are substantial utility work that should also be done prior to a project of this scope moving forward. In any event, it is still our plan to do a streetscape reconstruction, but in conjunction with utility improvements that would include not only water, sewer, but also drainage improvements, which we've also come to experience quite recently in that area. So essentially, we're looking to do two things: move forward on the county-funded, the CDBG-funded portion of the project, which does have a time limit of later this year, early next year, for that work to be contracted. And that's what we are moving forward with this evening for that portion of the work. Additionally, related to that, we have authorization resolution for submission of a Safe Routes to School grant program, and the plan would be to resubmit a previously submitted application for essentially the same type of work, sidewalk improvements, because Broad Street is the primary school route for a substantial population of the schools attending. So this gives us an opportunity also to seek grant funding that may then allow us to reallocate the previously authorized municipal funds for this overall project. So again, there are a couple of components to that, but that's essentially where we are now.
So if the project submission that was submitted by Trevor shows a total of $189,000, but the estimate for proposal letter shows $39,500 for a CME for the estimates of the project. 162.5 the $162,000 grant from Monmouth County is not allowed to cover any expenses called soft labor. Is that correct?
That's correct. The grant funds, this particular grant program does not allow for the design and engineering related to the project to be paid for with grant funds. So we would be supplementing the grant with municipal funds to cover the design and engineering portion of the project.
So, and then right now that's coming in at $39,500, right? But then what about the difference of the 162 and the 189?
Likewise, this is the current estimate based on the engineer's review. The final cost will be determined once the project does go out to bid. And again, any cost in excess of the grant funds that are available will be provided with municipal funds, which we do already have in place by virtue of the bond ordinance that you referenced earlier.
So potentially there's still $450,000 left on that bond if we don't go forward with the original scope of project, which was going to be to do all the sidewalks from Monroe to Maple. So what is the plan for that $450,000?
Well, again, if we are successful in obtaining the grant fund under the Safe Routes to School program, those funds, the authorization that is in the form of the bond ordinance could either be canceled or reallocated to another project. If we are unsuccessful in obtaining the grant fund, then we have the funding available to move forward with the full scope of the project once we complete the utility work.
How long can we hold that bond? Well,
the bond actually carries indefinitely. We have, as you've indicated, the bond authorization is there. We have not actually borrowed those funds, and until such time as the bond authorization is canceled, it is an active authorization.
Thanks for clarifying. Obviously, all of that, as you know, I've only found out about that change today. So, also on the payment of those 204.21, page 6. I think this may have taken place prior to your arrival when we had Mr. Henshaw here, but there was a shared service agreement with Monmouth County for the cleaning of the bus at their facility. So I see on here that did we void that or did that just lapse because of the time?
No, actually, we still have the arrangement with the county. I'm trying to recall the specifics of whether the bus was not a vehicle that they could accommodate. I recall there was some aspect of it, but I could double check that.
Okay, thank you. On 20821, the resolution, we need to write all the roads that are for the county, requesting to be, I didn't know if they need to be listed or if we should add a line in that resolution indicating that we're hoping to make all local roadways except for 35 and 36, 25 miles an hour. I understand why it's written in a way that we're saying we want all county roadways, but I think it makes it look like we only want their roads 25. Like, I think maybe can we add something in there to say that the goal is to make the municipality 25?
I guess the best way to answer that, if I may,
Apparently for the audience.
is that,
We ask for 15 and they come back with 25? Is that?
the impetus for this was some prior discussion, and Councilmember McNamara had requested that we move forward with a request to the county for all roads. And again, this request would go to the county for them to start the process to review whether they would alter the speed limit on the county roads. But if you're talking about something more global.
Well, I think it stemmed from a conversation at the last meeting that she asked if, Councilwoman McNamara asked if the roadway could be looked at for 25 miles an hour, and then we had discussion and dialogue to see if the whole municipality could become 25 miles an hour with the exception of 35 and 36. And Trevor was going to look in his files and see what we had requested in the past. But then the resolution came up instead, so I didn't know what we ever requested in the past, but if this is our first ask to the county, I would just like another sentence maybe added in there, that it's a goal of the municipality to make the whole municipality 25 miles an hour with the exception of the highways. Just so that they know we're not just targeting their roads.
When we say 25 miles at the whole municipality, we're just talking about the 25 mile an hour. I mean, I'd like to see, in other words, the back streets be less than 25. So can it be 25 miles per hour or less? In other words, I'd like to see, it'd be great if First Street was less than 25, but I'll be happy when we finally get the signs. Are the signs up on First?
They're not.
No. So, but I'll be happy when that happens. But,
So it's already done on First, right?
well,
Or
First,
part of it.
First, Broad, and I believe Front is 25 now, is it not?
Not all the way.
But is it 25 right here?
It starts right at this building, from Broadway to there, it's 30.
Okay, so we need to, right, I think all roads is probably, you know what, all roads for intents and purposes as far as the county is concerned is fine with me, but I don't want that to, it's never gonna preclude us from wanting to reduce the speed limits even further on some of the carriage roads in town, right? So.
Oh, I think, can you also take a minute, Mr. Delaney, and explain 20521 for the property taxes on 149 West Front Street? I think I myself was even not very clear on how that was initiated.
Yes, this was initiated through the tax assessor. He recognized that the ownership of two particular block and lots, that's block 21.02, lots 20 and 21, that they were erroneously assessed to the adjacent property. That block and lot are actually properties that are owned by the borough, and the assessor has recommended that the taxes be credited in the amount of what would be the overpayment for the current year.
Are we sure that the process by which the assessor has this all laid out works? Because I'm pretty sure that there has to be some kind of judgment from either the tax court or the county board to switch at least the lots that are attached.
Again, it was initiated through the assessor's office as a correction of erroneous assessment. And in this case, you know, the borough being the actual owner of the property, there was some substantial confusion regarding the process by which that error occurred.
May I ask if we can maybe table this one so that we can get further clarification on it? If there's no, if we're issuing a credit, I think there's a deadline, right? Like, so I think, is anyone opposed to making a motion to table this?
It would be 3 years, I think,
If we table it tonight?
if I'm correct, we can check we can fix the error going back 3 years, if I know what I'm talking about. So, I think, what is it, 20 and 19, so yeah, we're good. We're good tabling.
Okay.
I know we're gonna table it, and I apologize for taking up more time, but was the error, if I'm reading it correctly, it looks like the error was found a few years ago, is that correct? Or was it just found now because it happened over the span of a couple of years, so we're correcting it now for?
Well, the background to it, in my understanding, Councilman, you can confirm, was 2021. We're always in question for quite a while, and they had to backdate with the water line in the harbor. Really it wasn't even consistent. So I know this went back to county records to look into all of this for quite a while. So I don't know when that got rectified or when it changed. I think we were waiting for it to change on a mod 4 once the determination was made.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a little while now, until like just the discussion of where that property ends, where the borough property begins, and what the tax implications
so-
are.
Just for more clarification for the newer members on the dais, maybe we should just pull those records and circulate them with the back history on all of this was, if you don't mind, Jim.
Sure.
Thank
Well,
you.
just to note, or at least our tax maps that are online now indicate that 20 and 21 are borough-owned lots, so I think that's, I don't know, somehow those got attached to the lots 19, 18 in 2019.
So
So I don't exactly know what the whole.
is there a motion to table that so the public knows that we're not gonna move that today?
Second.
Did we make the motion?
I motion to table it.
Second was.
Sorry, I don't
All in
know.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed to tabling? Okay, any council members have any questions on items on the agenda before we open it to the public?
I do know.
Councilwoman Davidson?
Thank you. Sorry. On the payment of bills, I was wondering under, on page 6, JCP&L. I know that's the average of what we pay, I guess monthly, of $7,715. But does that include, like maintenance, like replacing the lights? Because there's significant amount out on the waterfront and throughout the town, so how does that work?
Well, it depends. The accounts that are labeled as street lighting are a flat, unmetered service. So it is essentially based on a flat amount per light fixture per month. So if a street light is out for an extended period, we can request a credit for that. But typically, it is unmetered service, and that's why it's important to notify of any outages. The promenade lights, the promenade lights, although in our world we would think of them as street lighting, they're not street lighting in the JCP&L billing cycle. Those are actually metered services for which we pay for the active electricity that is used. So our street lighting that's listed here are for what I'll call your standard, arm holding the light, as well as traffic. Actually, I don't want to misspeak. Traffic lights may be a separate account, although I think they are listed under the street lighting account.
Okay, so do we have a running list of the lights that are out so we can go back to JCP&L, see if they've been out for an extended period of time to get the credit?
I know that my office receives information about street lights being out. I know just personally, I take note of any street lights that are noticed, and there's an online submission that is done directly to JCP&L for that. So that I'm not aware, or if you're aware of any that are out for an extended period.
Also on the payment of bills, page 7, under the attorney's fees, McManaman, Scotland, Bellman, it says additional miscellaneous legal. Is that in addition to the monthly fee that we pay for the retainer?
Yes, it is. Our monthly retainer covers what I would call routine matters, any matters that involve litigation or are billed separately and accounted for separately. Additionally, this firm also serves as the borough's redevelopment attorney, so there are some charges that are billed, paid by the borough, and are charged to redevelopment escrow accounts.
That was my next question. And then, I'm sorry for all those questions. On page 10, I think it is, pumping services, $4,010.84. Where was that? What was that one for?
I believe, I would have to double check, but my recollection is that was, we had a issue with one of the wastewater pump stations. I believe that was the Maple Street station in late August, early September, that required a temporary pumping services brought in.
Under the legal fees, there are numbers. So it looks like most of the items under the larger line item are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. But under the legal fees, it's 5, 6, 9, and 10. What happened to 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8?
What page are you on? 7.
Page 7?
Oh, it's going back.
Maybe we can talk about, it's just I'm just wondering where the extra lines disappeared to.
I don't know the answer to that question. I'd have to, perhaps I can come up with an answer before the end of the meeting, but I'm not sure.
Okay. In regards to 20621, or 20721, the safe route to schools, is there a possibility that would cover all the work we want to do to Borough Street, so which would kind of negate some of the work that we discussed before?
Yes. The amount, the grant that we will be submitting is in the amount of $700,000 to basically cover all of the original anticipated scope of work. And under the Safe Routes to School program, design and engineering are covered, so that would explain the difference from what our expected construction cost would be versus the overall grant that we are requesting.
Okay. I might go back to that one later, sorry. 20921, mosaic benches. I get that the Art Society wants to donate them, but how are we supposed to maintain them? And where does that fall into it? So incurring the cost for maintaining it, are we going to have to hire people if tiles fall off to go back and repair something that was created by another entity? Well, I think they're beautiful and they're lovely. I just don't know if it's something that we should take on personally for repair or maintenance of it.
Actually, I had a question on that too as well. The draft that I had received for that resolution indicated that the Art Society was maintaining the upkeep of those and responsibility with the certificate of insurance, but when I read through it again today, it says differently. So do we know?
I'd ask for the change there. I'd ask for the change. I would ask both the mayor and Councilman Davidson if there's any precedent of a municipality with a donated piece of art that didn't take on the maintenance for the art.
I personally don't know the answer to that.
I do. They take on the maintenance themselves as a gift, And typically what happens is, if it needs to be, you know, if birds poop on a statue, they need to clean, the municipality ends up cleaning it. In this case, there's, also sometimes there's some vandalism that happens where people are digging out, the tiles themselves. Mr. Merla has been asking for years now if we can put a camera up there. I mean, that's probably something we might want to do anyway, but I couldn't for the life of me find any precedent where the artist was responsible for the maintenance and the insurance of the sculptures. And if we can, then
I can correct that.
it makes
The
sense.
MPP program, we hired artists, and the artists are responsible for maintaining the artwork for 5 years until that grant expires. And if the artwork does decay and is not valid, does not appear efficient, it will be taken out off the properties. So that's how we did that at the borough with the MPP program.
But
Hold on 1 second, Councilman Pacheco has her hand
Don't
up.
we, so it might be opening Pandora's box thing, bringing up the library, but don't we have a similar agreement with the butterfly statue at the library? Was donated to the borough so we can cover it under insurance, wasn't that, does this ring a bell? I feel like it was
We're
when I
not
was
open
on the
to the
library.
public.
Well, I would research that, I think we have a similar,
I guess covering it under insurance might be one issue, but the taking on the maintenance of it when we're clearly having an issue with staff in town, getting to what the borough needs to be done on an immediate basis, like emptying the garbage and cleaning up the streets and painting the streets and the landscaping and 1, 2, 3, 4 and everything else. I think taking on those egg benches at this time, that's gonna fall on DPW to clean up bird poop, I'm sorry to say it that way, and maintain it, is maybe not something that we should consider at this time. While I appreciate they want to donate to the borough, I just think it's something to consider, and I could be all alone on this, it's just, I would like to have it brought up.
no, I don't think you're all alone, and I think it's a valid point if we consider the,
Let's talk list out of respect to let her finish her question, so that way we can move on.
wait a minute, Councilwoman McDermott, it's a dialogue that we're having right here, it's okay.
There might be other members who may feel strongly or not strongly about it.
Okay,
I'm okay for now, it's again, just going back to the lack of time that our borough employees have to maintain it. We have the garden club that puts in beautiful gardens all over town, and we're now hiring outside vendors to maintain them for us at an additional cost to the borough. And then when those don't look right, it comes back on us for saying, why don't those look right? And while I love them, they're gorgeous, and I appreciate the work and the time that went into designing and planting, I think we have to seriously stop and consider taking on more pieces and more gardens and everything else until we get our staffing under control. Anyway, that's all I can say
anybody
right
else,
now.
you wanna say anything?
I'm done, thank you.
I just would urge us to, and I'm actually trying to find it right now, look at the agreement that we put in place for the art that's out in front of the library, because I really think we did a similar thing there. And the precedence was that already.
Can you also see if we did anything similar for when they had the butterfly project on the waterfront, that became tedious for DPW too, and then the argument?
The traveling butterflies, that's actually what I'm finding right now, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just making notes and report offline.
Anything else on the agenda from any council members?
I have a couple of questions.
Councilman Pacheco?
With regards to maintenance of the sculptures themselves, has the DPW been dispatched at a great deal or out of inconvenience to our borough employees to clean or maintain the sculptures as it stands now? Does anybody know the answer to that?
We don't maintain them currently because they haven't been ours to maintain.
But so there's been no activity at the benches themselves to clean or maintain the benches over the 4 years or 5 years since they were completed?
I don't know about maintenance, but I do know that there's been several police calls there, and then there's a difference of opinion on whether they're benches and they're allowed to be sat on. I can defer to Chief Torres.
I could just tell you that after meeting with Charlie a lot,
They're not benches. They were made as art sculptures that were rocks, and I had long conversations with Charlie about this. At the time that when they were first put up, we were actually, I'm sorry, I think I'm screaming, but
It's all right.
it's been a long day. At the time that they were put up, I was actually detective sergeant, and we had some people sitting on them, so we were actually driving down there telling people that they couldn't even sit on them. That's how much, and I think if there's any people that participated in that project, they will tell you they're not to be referred to as benches. They weren't meant to be benches. They were sculptures that were, they were rock, they could explain it better. They were like coming from the earth, rock sculptures. We did set up a camera down there. I set it up myself. It took a long time, and we reviewed what was happening. At one point, we had a 3-year-old with a toy truck on the other side of it, and smashed the truck down and broke one of the little pieces. Because it is a beautiful, beautiful project. And a lot of heart and soul was put into it. I know at points we just wanted to we had asked as a police department to maybe get it protected a little more, kind of,
Put a fence up, maybe?
a couple things. I mean, that was it. I know at that point we were trying to not get people to sit on them. There was a bunch of different calls that were down there. I can't speak for Public Works of what happened, but that's what I could tell you about the history that I know.
What was the most recent incident?
I can pull those calls from Spillman. Right now, I'd have to look at
Yeah, okay.
the calls to tell you if there was, a call down there or a criminal mischief that happened. I guess we're speaking of vandalism. I mean, I could pull the calls if you guys wanted to review them.
When I was first elected, Charles Merla brought me out to the benches and he called them benches when we were talking, just so you know. But that's okay, if it's not, if it is, but, he explained that the sculptures, represented, transition from the sea to the land, right? And, one of the things that is, most intriguing about them is that as the Art Society learned how to create the mosaic, they got a lot better at it. So the first sculpture that you see is wonderful, but the detail and the intricacy of the final sculpture, which is to the south, the southernmost, is exquisite. When Hurricane Sandy took out the original sculpture mosaic, it was determined that the Art Society wanted to put something a little more sturdy in there. For the life of me, I don't know why. I understand the concern, I do, about the maintenance of it, and I think that there's a path to yes, that we can take to accept the generous gift of the Art Society of the sculptures, and create, get an understanding or get a cooperation from either members of the Art Society or other artisans to repair the mosaics when it's needed. As far as sitting on the mosaic, as far as sitting on the sculptures or not, it's something that, I don't know if we're going to be able to prevent or enforce, but the damage that's been done to the sculptures themselves over the years that we've seen them, I'm not going to say it's minimal, but the beauty certainly has been maintained for a good portion of the sculptures themselves. So I would encourage that we do accept the generous gift, and if it's an issue of maintenance, then maybe we can come up with a plan to encourage our willing volunteers in town to continue to maintain if need be, especially if there's extreme damage to them. Thanks.
Councilman McNamara?
From my recent assessment over there, there is currently some significant repair needed. There are some chunks missing. So I don't know of anybody besides the Art Society in the borough who is really qualified to repair them properly. So I do have issue with the repair and maintenance being a borough thing. Insurance, you know, I don't even know what that would cost, if it's insignificant or whatever. But the repair and maintenance, I besides going to the Art Society, I don't know how we would facilitate that to really, you know, keep them in the shape that they should be. And I mean, I personally have always thought having that gravel around there is absolutely the wrong thing. I mean, people walk and kick it just by nature of their walking, right? So you kick it and the stones are hitting off the bottom. I mean, things like that, you know, I'm sure aggravate it. And I personally didn't know that we're not supposed to sit on it, and I sit on them all the time with my grandson, so I don't get in trouble. But I, you know, if somebody has thoughts on maintenance and repair, I could then see addressing it, but I don't know that, you know, without knowing how we would handle that I'm comfortable just saying that we would do that. Because I don't know what it looks like.
I would actually like to have the document, have the plan of action that's gonna be regarding maintenance and support of this, before everything's approved with this.
Councilman Pacheco?
So it was actually in 2017, which feels like a long time ago now. It was for the traveling butterfly. I know for sure we did that to cover it under the insurance. We should probably research to see what we spoke to when it came to maintenance. I actually just can't find the resolution. But that was definitely the last time we did something like this. It was kind of the same thing where they donated it to the borough. But I can't find it to see what we said about maintenance.
If it's under our insurance, Mayor, does it, and it's damaged, does insurance cover it?
If it's damaged already?
Oh, I don't know, I'm not saying already, I don't think they would do.
Right. So I guess there's that was just brought up. So my suggestion would be, can we table it, but you guys can have to make that decision, so that those last few questions that came up can be clarified, so it can be put into the document.
So I think this is a good opportunity to liaise with the Art Society, and I'd be willing to do that. So, yeah, sure, let's, I make a motion that we table it and we discuss a maintenance plan, as Councilwoman McDermott put it. And we'll see if we can't take the maintenance under, and I would encourage anybody to find precedent, please, of you know, municipalities not taking maintenance responsibilities on donated artwork, but.
So it's not going as a no, it's just going as a table, so I can use a motion.
Of course, I make the motion, we table it.
So Dory just motion, second, so all in favor?
Resolution, because this isn't like a new concept. We're not
Right,
doing
right.
anything new here, so I really just want to see what we wrote down.
You said,
It's 2017.
Any other agenda items? Are there any left?
Traveling butterfly,
Just for practicality speaking, we are talking about something that is on borough property. That's like at least a disconnect that I want everybody to recognize.
Right.
The same thing with the plantings. They're on borough property, they are our responsibility, period. The fact that we have volunteers that are helping out is incredible, but also it leads to what happens if the volunteers can't make it. And it looks not all that, as you said, not all that wonderful, but the fact of the matter is, this is borough property, and so we have this black hole of artwork that is owned by somebody else, literally on borough property. Nobody really is maintaining.
So, Councilman Good, you bring up a great point, because that's the issue, when we have nonprofit organizations or volunteers put things on borough property, and then it falls back on the borough to maintain it. So we don't have any decent agreements or contracts with these nonprofit entities that say, hey, you're gonna officially support this, go ahead and put this on. you know, whether it's a rain garden or it's an art exhibit. I think we need to have agreements with these entities to understand what the maintenance and ownership of this is.
But then when we do, that doesn't get adhered to anyway, because there's a
Right.
sign. They
You
put
know,
up a sign
I mean,
themselves
again,
that
all I
says
want-
they maintain
but
the
that's-
rain gardens.
That's the point of, we're putting it on borough property.
I agree.
Putting aside that anything else, it's that, it's the borough's responsibility, period, if we're gonna put it on borough property. If it's on borough property, I mean, these people, nobody just came and all of a sudden in the middle of the night dropped these mosaics on. They were created, they were put, this council allowed for it, so
So it should be a simple fix to simply put in an agreement with the Art Society and the artist to come in and fix it as needed.
that could be true, but at the bottom line, if they don't do it, it is still the borough's responsibility to do, and it should be if we're going to say, this is on our property. I mean, we wanna make the borough as clean as possible, and I think it's like, you know, if they get a statute in the middle, or you say, no, we're just gonna let it go, let it deteriorate because the, nonprofit who donated it is not gonna do it. No, I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's wonderful if we rely upon any of the nonprofits to help out, but it's the borough's responsibility, and we should have, you know, we should be at least ready to pick up and do all of this. That's the bottom line, is that we've allowed these plantings, and then we just said, okay, somebody else will take care of it. And then, you know, we get to the point.
Now we're paying $4,000 to take care of it.
Right, but the fact of the matter is, we have to get that and understand that if we're going to allow the planting, yes, we should be responsible for
Their
it.
plans have to be communicated to.
If they wanna help out, that's great, but the borough should be responsible for it. Bottom line, it's on borough property.
And years ago, you had a willing group of people up here that allowed the gardens to be planted and the sculptures to be created. And, you know, I think we might, somehow we're taking a wrong approach to this by eliminating or not taking into account, I hope that's not the case, but not taking into account the time and effort and the volunteer paid projects that have been established, you know, throughout the town. And, you know, I think from my perspective, I want to accept these efforts and these projects with the gratitude of the borough and with the willingness to do our part to maintain them, as far as, you know, to honor both the effort and the sacrifice that these volunteers made throughout the years doing this. If we don't maintain the gardens, then clear cut them, you know, and then we'll see how the waterfront looks. If we don't want this, you know, if I'm not saying that's what we should do, but this is where I think.
That is what's happening now with the gardens. They are getting clear-cutted. And the sign in the rain garden clearly says that was put up by the Art Society, by the garden club, that it will be maintained by the garden club. And then the same thing with the senior center and the library. And the amount of complaints and complaints and complaints that we all see on social media and that go to my inbox, and the 411 or whatever the 311 is on the website, of the overgrowth of the garden, and then we're told we're not supposed to maintain them, and then the landscaper can't even cut the grass because there's no grass, it's all overgrown by the gardens. So I do believe there needs to be a clearer delineation or forethought when we are accepting these types of things. So we are now, what is the amount going to be, Jake, to clear the shrubs down at the waterfront?
About $4,000 to, you know, reset the plantings.
Councilman Checker?
I guess I don't know why they haven't been done over the years, but.
Garden club was doing them.
That's the problem. It's the borough's responsibility. The garden club should be a supporting actor, but if it was, the borough should not have allowed it to go that far. That's kind of the question of how did it let go of that?
And when we say the garden club should be doing that, we're not backing it with any financial agreement or anything like that. We're expecting them to volunteer. And I think that expecting them to volunteer and having an open dialogue with members of the community to volunteer and ask for their services to volunteer are two different things.
And I 100% agree with you on the dialogue, that when they wanted to stop doing it, they could have come to us and tell us so that we could have gotten a plan in action to take care of it ourselves.
We all have eyes, we could have seen how bad they're overgrowing, and somebody could have went down and talked to them about it. I mean, that's neither here nor there. I think we all agree that the overgrowth during COVID has been spectacular. But as far as we do have some volunteers from the garden club that are offering to maintain some of the places in town, and they've done it. So if we don't enter a kind and respectful two-way dialogue, and I'd be willing to do it, then maybe we just need to find out if we have the people and if they're willing to do it, and if not, then we do this one-time $4,000 job and make sure we maintain it going forward. It is unfortunate, but.
Any other agenda item topic, Councilman McNamara?
If I could just add, because I mean, some of these gardens I actually help at and have for a number of years. So I think, a lot of things start with really good intention. I mean, I know that my husband was very involved with the rain garden and things like that. So it all starts good, but people tire after a while. They get involved in a lot of different things. And so the initial conversations don't include the borough doing that. And then all of a sudden you're 4 or 10 years out and now it changes. So I guess the thing to me would be, to take a look at all of those different things, all of those different gardens that now that it's $4,000 for this landscaper, or it'll be this for that, whatever it is, and get an idea of what that means to our annual budget. I mean, that is a big part of our budget, and I think it should be looked at. And I also think that, we have to evaluate that ongoing cost of those, and then we have to look at new projects. When the Labyrinth, my family participated in that. That was a wonderful, feel-good thing. But then you go by, and the weeds are this high, right? So is that a borough property that we're supposed to be maintaining? So it gets a little tricky, right? Like, the intentions are all good, but.
I found the resolution, it's R-21917. It's actually the library's responsibility for any maintenance on the butterfly. So we have done this before. We're not reinventing the wheel here. Perhaps it's worth tabling this, reviewing this ordinance and resolutions, and similar resolutions, and coming to some sort of agreement. Like, we're arguing up here, but we're not, we've done this before. Yeah, I'm just saying, though, like, we've done this before. We should do the research to see what we've done in the past, because it's the library's responsibility. And we have borough and library employees that I would think would get tasked with maintaining that if something would happen to butterfly. But I have to call my way into saying that, so.
Can I move away from, the mosaics and?
Benches and butterflies?
and
I mean,
benches and butterflies?
sculptures and butterflies?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like the updated parking use regulations. I don't believe that that's ready to be introduced. I'm not really sure how it got on
The park regulations?
the ordinance that we're introducing.
Yeah, I would love for that to be tabled.
Yeah, I don't know how it got there, because I know that Jay, you asked me whether or not it is for discussion or anything, and I said no.
So can I just ask, what is the process for feedback on this? No,
Jay, I
just-
go through with Jay.
collection of feedback on this, so do we give it to the two of you, since you're the liaisons for the rec committee? Where is this falling under the council?
I think it spans across committees.
I know,
You know
I
what,
agree.
you can give it back to me,
And,
and I'll
Councilman
get it,
Matt,
I'll get it.
Okay, so that's gonna be, we need a motion to table the introduction, so the public knows that that's not getting introduced tonight before they open the public.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Should be noted by Councilman Pacheco. Oh, she's not. Councilman Pacheco would just motion, to table the park recreation, ordinance introduction.
I abstain, I wasn't just for the conversation.
Any other agenda items? Any questions on the contract? I have one other payment of bill question, Jai. Page 7. The tennis poles for $1,176.
Yes,
Is that to go with the new nets that were put on the old pole?
yes.
So are those installed yet or to be installed?
I'm not aware that they were installed, so we're just paying for them now. I know that they had been ordered some time ago. They were back ordered.
Okay. So are they going to take down the fencing that's in between them?
Yes, the intent is to have new nets on new mounting structures. So
That
they look
aren't
like real
sweeping
tennis
the
courts.
court? Okay. Okay, motion to open to the public?
Motion.
Second.
Motion to open to the public for agenda items only, with the minus of everything that was tabled. Mr. Morello?
Mayor, what you said with the minus of what?
What we
All the
pulled.
items that were
Second
tabled.
table.
All right, well, that was listed and advertised, so. John Morella, 34 Broad Street. One of the items I was gonna say was the introduction of the ordinance. Last meeting, the council approved having a, which I thought was very nice, a cooking event. And it was discussed amongst the council, no gas grills. This ordinance tonight that you would have introduced allows gas stoves. So obviously, no one's reading, no offense, someone's not reading what we're posting. Because it doesn't make sense. I mean, what changed in 2 weeks? One of my questions is the contract for 20621. I wholeheartedly support ADA compliance. My dad was handicapped. But in this zone, where we're doing this community development block grant, and we're changing the curbs and sidewalks to meet ADA compliance, here's where children walk to school every day, back and forth. I can show you 50 intersections in town right now that when it rains and when it snows and the water melts, it becomes more of a hazard and a liability than a compliance. What I'm saying to you is the depressed curb has to meet the top of the road. The water lays, freezes, and no disrespect, it's going to be very hard for someone in a wheelchair or a handicap to get across a ponding where it's frozen. I know it's an engineering nightmare to me because it has to be done. I mean, it looks nice, but the overall, I would just say, compliance has to be really looked at because in this zone, it is small children walking back and forth to school. The other was the 208-21. I wholeheartedly support that and the efforts of the council. I think that's a great idea, 25 mile an hour. The other thing was the sculptures. Just wanted to say that 2 things. One, if they're on borough property, that specific piece of property, number 1, that project, the boat ramp, was funded and approved and is on inventory for Green Acres. That means somebody, previous council, had to approve those sculptures being put on borough property. They had to be. You just can't put benches on private property, especially when it's borough property. Nobody, even if they work for the town, can't do it. So somebody approved. That resolution might tell you what was approved. And in the future, who was to maintain them, who was to insure them. I'm sure if those sculptures are on borough property, they're insured by the borough right now. Your insurance agent would have to. The other thing was, well, I'll talk about it, the Jersey Central, Councilwoman Davidson brought up. The poles, there's several, no disrespect, like at least 70 out on borough streets. The thing that I'm concerned about is, at the planning board level, we have major projects that were approved, and part of the project was decorative lighting. And 4 of those projects right now, Beer Street, across the street from the senior citizens, is pitch black at night. None of them lights work. First Street, 2 through 12, 2 through 16, none of those lights work. First and Atlantic, all those decorative lights, none of those work. So, like, you know, we have teeth. We have a planning board approval that says if you install the decorative lighting on this project, you have to maintain them and they have to be working. Go after them. Make it work. Thank you.
I think it's not something different on the plans for, First and, project,
Which property are you referring to, the first?
townhomes on First.
On First, yes, my recollection, having reviewed the approval process, there are 2 types of approvals. One is certainly something that's part of the site amenities that are on the property of the developer, and there's a requirement that they be maintained. It appears that, my recollection anyway, from the one property that you're referencing on First Street, that those were off-site improvements to the public right-of-way, and there's some question as to, it is not as clear-cut as you're indicating, that the developer was to maintain those in perpetuity. It appears that like any other type of off-site improvement that may have, the developer may have been required to install it, but was not required to maintain it or to pay the electric on it. And those lights, for instance, that power is paid by, the electric is paid by the borough.
And aren't you looking up the accident records to go after these guys have to be replaced now? Any other members of the public? Mr. Crew?
Ed Carew, 64 Broadway. My wife and I are founding members of the Garden Club and the Art Society of Keyport. And we've been involved extensively in what goes on in this borough. And I'm very, very proud to live in a town that came up with the idea of the Art Society and the Garden Club, and then have experienced tremendous success, you know, when we may not have. So it was through a lot of hard work. And I appreciate the conversations. I just went through a range of emotions listening to all of this. And as a member in the beginning, a little history. The Garden Club was started by Councilwoman Christian Bolte. Was her initiative to start the Garden Club and to do all of these things for the benefit of the borough. So the whole purpose of the Garden Club was to do gardens on borough property. And I think the zeal and the idea of younger people, and I was one of those younger people, and now I'm starting to feel like not one of those younger people at 71 years old. But yeah, I think a lot of members in the Garden Club are getting tired, and it's hard to maintain. But anyhow, Christian Bolte started the organization, and it turned out pretty well. Then Councilwoman Susie Sefcik, the following year, came up with the idea for the Art Society for the benefit of the borough for projects on borough property. I think wanting to do all of these nice things have blinded us all a little bit. I think as the volunteers, you know, we get in over our heads. I don't think on purpose, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think that one thing that we did forget, because we did a presentation in front of the board. Not one of you here was there then. I've been here sitting in the audience with my wife for many years. And Mary Ann McKay and I sat here and explained everything. One thing that we failed to think about, because I think it's impossible to think of everything, the end game. What does that mean? And we liked the idea of what we were doing, the benefit to the borough. The mosaic benches, you'll never see anything like that, I don't think, on the eastern seaboard. You know, and the rain garden was the first rain garden on the eastern seaboard. And we talked with the engineers who wanted to put trees in there that never would have survived. So the master gardener, my wife partly, you know, came up with trees that would survive, plants that would survive. So, you know, there was a lot of things going on, and I'm starting to get a little clumped. So, just remember that it came from the borough, okay? There's a borough idea, and I think we should work together, and I think we should come up with a plan. The Art Society doesn't have a lot of money to pay for these things. The Garden Club has a little bit better checking account, but I think you need to work something out. As far as the volunteers go, I do remember the traveling butterfly.
I gave you some bad
Well, the
luck.
traveling butterfly, we called it that because
I found it by typing in Corona.
art societies from Keyport, you know, a lot of different art societies had contributions to it. So we traveled around Belmar, Atlantic Highlands. And I think that we agreed at the library to take care of it.
Yeah, that's what the resolution says.
But you can't do that with the labyrinth. Yeah, and I built the labyrinth, and we had permission for it. So, and how it was going to be maintained. I cut the grass when I could. I weed whacked. I made sure all the bricks were put there, and you know, when someone dropped off art, I put it right up. I took weeds out with these little sticker things on them. You know, you get them in your shoelace and it sticks your fingers. And we took those all out, but we didn't think about the long-term maintenance and care of it. So, advice to the borough, I don't want to see these efforts disappear, all right? And one of the former administrators, business administrators, said, and he said to me, beware of organizations bearing gifts. I wanted to hit him. However, there is logic to what he says. When we built a waterfront down here, what happened? Oh, I say we. When the borough built the waterfront, what happened? It took 30 years to get it. I remember that from the early conversations. And there's a maintenance problem there. So what was the purpose of it? To bring people into Keyport. There's a cost for that we didn't think about. The garbage that generates, the damage that happens, and the inferior quality of the material we got. Okay? Clocks that don't work properly, facades that have fallen down, concrete that says, you know, the spalling that happens, that was denied by the engineers of this town. Until the iron rods started sticking out of the concrete. Okay? So, there's a lot of problems that have to be corrected. And I think, you know, it's going to take some time because the problems are surfacing. And I think that I don't want us to get discouraged. At the same time, I want this to be a beautiful town. I love Keyport. And I would do anything, you know, for this town. And almost anything. You may have noticed I've shaved my beard. Okay? Thank you for your attention. I just wanted to get a little history in though, because the Garden Club and the Art Society were initiatives of the borough. We did sit before this borough and have a plan, presented it to the borough, it was accepted. We didn't dot all the I's and cross the T's. And I think our enthusiasm has blinded us a little bit. but we have accomplished phenomenal things. I mean, people came from all over the state of New Jersey complimenting us on the labyrinth and saying, hey, what a great idea. And the timing was phenomenal. I don't think it would be as successful if we didn't have COVID. Because families came together from all over the state to look at it. I don't think they came here to look at it, but they came down to Keyport from Fort Lee, out of state, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware. That's great for this little town. So think about a solution to the problem, but remember that we have a benefit for all of these things, you know? And we got to work together as a team. But, and you know, attitudes have to be, I think, positive. How are we going to fix this? How are we going to work together? And, you know, the volunteers. One of the mayors, I think it was McLeod, said 70% of all the work in Keyport gets done by volunteers. You don't want to smack them too hard. Okay? And, you know, I know it says maintained by the garden club down at the rain garden. That's a little bit over the head of financials that we can do. But there is a way I'm sure we can work together. And the garden club hasn't attracted younger members over the years. The Art Society has a little bit, but it's hard to get people to volunteer, you know, and keep an interest in there and come out and do these things. So there's a lot of things that are factors. Thank you for your kind attention.
Good job.
Mr. Lane?
Michael Lane, 51 First Street, Keyport. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. And I again want to thank you for getting the details of the items before the council tonight posted prior to the meeting on the internet. Regarding resolution 208, the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign. I encourage you to move on that as fast as you can. And don't break the speed limit. And in line with Mayor Will, that you really need to pass it tonight. And we really need the traffic calming that will come from that. Resolution 206, which has to do with the sidewalks and curbs between Ron and Monroe. And I understand there's funding issues, but I also have a question regarding, is it going to be redesigned per the complete street design guide with 6-foot wide sidewalks and with setbacks from the curb?
The complete streets guide has not been adopted by the borough at this point in time, so I think that's one of the other questions as well. Same thing with, in general, if you put curbing where a lot of people currently park on sidewalks, which isn't appropriate to begin with, we all know they do, you're going to have a lot of people driving up and down Broad Street with their mirrors being hit. So I still think that this would be advantageous for what the Complete Streets project originally was, brought to here as a suggestion for, was to do studies to see if Broad Street could be one way. So I think that's a lot of the other things that still have to be reviewed. So if it's one way, perhaps the sidewalks could be widened, but all of that is still to be considered.
But again, you really need to give the residents a heads up, because there's retaining walls and yards that are significantly impacted.
I agree.
In that regulation. Regarding resolution 205, the property tax credit for 149 West Front. The resolution states that lots 20 and 21 on block 21.02 are owned by 149 West Front, but yet we're now saying that we're taxed in air. So this brings up an issue. If you walk down West Front, in that area, you'll see very large signs posted in the areas of lot 20 and 21 that says they're private property. So what's the disconnect? And why haven't we enforced, it seems to me the borough ought to take a bucket of red paint and put a line down where the property line is. Because this 149 West Front has been claiming this as private property for multiple years now. And in addition, if you look at the property record cards, it's very clear that this is borough property. In terms of, so I don't understand how it got taxed. The coastal general permit, number 10, that the applicant put in for his bulkhead only lists lots 15 through 19. It doesn't list lots 20 and 21. Because if you're going to do bulkheading, you really have to come up with strong evidence that you own the property by deeds. And so that's an issue. The attachment to the council resolution 165-21 indicated that the borough owned lots 20 and 21. And so when is the borough going to take action and clearly delineate at that site where the property line is? And resolve the issue, the signage issue, saying it's private property. So I think in addition to not passing this resolution tonight, you need to work that problem. All right, 2 other items. Under new business, the flood damage prevention ordinance. What version of the draft flood damage prevention ordinance is the council evaluating now? Is it the 4/19/20 version? And what is the process and who's involved in evaluating this flood damage prevention ordinance? Is the council also aware that FEMA has guidelines for the flood damage prevention ordinance, especially for towns which have both tidal flooding and fluvial flooding, and that our ordinance has to align with the FEMA guidelines that are posted in the internet. Also, under the cannabis ordinance, under unfinished business, I again implore you not to introduce any new districts, any changes in the zoning map, but instead use the setback requirements for churches and schools and residential lots in residential districts A, B, and C as the tool for setting the boundaries for cannabis. Thank you.
Elmer J. Graham Jr., 22 St. Peter's Place. Good evening, Madam Mayor and the Borough Council. Good evening tonight. Anyway, on Resolution 20821, I definitely agree with you on that. You know, with a uniform speed limit of 25 miles per hour needs to be established on all county roads within the borough. But I would go and maybe expand on that. In addition to all county roads in the borough, it should be expanded. It should be for every road in this borough. 25 miles per hour county, borough road, and everything like that.
That's the plan. But we could do that ourselves, right? We don't have to go to county we have to go to county because of the county roads, but the request I had last meeting was for all roads in the municipality except for 35 and 36 to be 25 or below.
I understand that, Madam Mayor. And in a way, piggybacking on that in a way too, I was also encouraged, as far as stopping at stop signs in the borough, especially on my street, St. Peter's Place, you have some cars that go down St. Peter's Place and do not stop at the stop sign at all. They just go right on through, especially when I'm walking and stuff like that. And another thing, I walk through this beautiful borough every morning, and believe me, it is a beautiful borough. I love it very much. I'm gonna harp on this again, but in regard to the sidewalks in this borough, public sidewalks especially, they need improvement, especially with the cracks in the sidewalks and everything like that. God forbid, we're walking on a public sidewalk and someone trips. The borough of Keyport and taxpayers are liable for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carlos?
Well, how's everyone doing? I'm Carl Penny. If people don't know me as Carlo, I'm going to keep this as brief as possible because I know it's kind of been going on. But I just wanted to touch on the mosaic structures again briefly. I know it appears to be a big source of contention, and I've got a pretty vested interest in Keyport's culture and arts. So, I mean, it appears like part of the problem with the damage to the mosaic structures. The rules of engagement for the art piece in question is largely ambiguous at best. I mean, just from this meeting alone, I've observed a few people say and mention there's hell. So I think there's a confusion over whether or not the art piece is considered interactive art. And I feel like it doesn't help that they look warm and inviting either. You know, so I mean, on a nice sunny day, it looks like a nice spot to sit, you know. So I feel like a lot of potential damage could be mitigated simply by placing clearer boundaries around it, clearer restrictions, you know, a quaint miniature picket fence around it maybe, anything that would discourage sitting or playing within the structures. I'm sorry, I'm very nervous, it's my first time speaking. As for the damage that does occur to it, missing tiles, I feel like obsessing over it, keeping it flawless might be a waste of energy. You know, I mean, a few missing tiles here or there kind of adds rustic value to the art piece anyway, which corroborates with Keyport's existing historical value. And it's one of those things that would probably only likely need biannual or even annual love and attention. And as for volunteers for the garden club, I'm an avid gardener. I'd like to help if you want to reach out to me anytime. I'm around. Okay?
Carl, call
Any
in.
other members of the public? Motion to close to the public?
Second.
Mayor,
may I say something before we continue? I don't know if my comments in the beginning were taken out of turn or if I've spoken in a rough way, but I would like everybody to know I love the sculptures. I love the garden club. I've watched them being built. I've seen them. I enjoy them with my children. My concern lies on, as Mr. Pena said, boundaries and setting them up so that everybody, including the artists that created them, the pieces themselves, as well as the borough, are all protected in the right way. And having not sat on this council prior to January, I don't know all the history. So this was my opportunity to say what I said, and I think going forward, setting up agreements that are clearly defined, that protect everybody involved, would be beneficial to all for this particular situation as well as going forward. So I just want to make clear that I love the Art Society and everything they've done and how it came about, so.
And I say the same too. I'm pro all of this, but we need to have sustainability and long-term investment in this, not just short-term.
Thank you.
So, we need a few mayor's updates. I'll be meeting with, members of Liberty Firehouse, that asked for a meeting along with the Keyport Fire Department Chief, Fire Committee, and Mr. Delaney, and explain what the process is, if they wanted to put forward a request of, potential truck request. So the guidelines set forth in the Borough Code was explained to them on what that process is. I attended the planning board meeting, went to the Bay Shore Mayors Association meeting, cheered on the participants of the 5K. Kudos to Keyport Recreation and Nancy Jones for putting on yet another wonderful event for the borough. Thank you to Keyport Police Department and DPW for all their assistance in helping to pull that off. Again, something that's done by a majority of volunteers. attended 2 ribbon cuttings for 2 new businesses in Keyport, attended the wellness walk, KVBC special meeting to discuss possible holidays. I think the biggest announcement I have tonight is almost next week, I think, will be a 2-year journey of establishing the Veterans Advisory Committee in the Borough of Keyport, set forth to see if we could apply for an award with the state of New Jersey to be designated as a We Value Our Veterans community, and through efforts of that committee and reviewing different things that we have implementations of in joint ventures both with the American Legion, the school district, and the borough, and also through efforts of Monmouth County. We have received confirmation that we have been selected to receive that award, and it will be presented to the borough at a ceremony in Homedale on Veterans Day. So, yes, that was a very well received email to get last week. So thank you for everyone that worked on that. Okay, now we will go on to the consent agenda.
For tabling to 6/21, given all the conversation about the other grants and possibilities that are coming, or? Okay. I didn't know.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Sorry, I
Nope.
should have answered that.
No, that's fine.
And is that,
wouldn't.
I mean, I guess that's up to the council. It's that.
I just want to request that 20221 be separately considered.
Do you have members here? You want to do that now?
Yes, well, we do have it at your,
So I'm going to do 20221. I did not know if or who you had the certificates for. So should we approve it and then present? Can I have a motion to approve 20221?
Motion.
second.
All in favor? No, sorry. I need a roll call on that, sorry.
Councilmember Good,
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco,
Yes.
Councilmember Patopoulos,
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott,
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson,
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
I'll call forward Council President Good to do a presentation.
Let's see, we got one for Dan's there, can you come up? I don't see. You don't poll. If the two of you guys will come up, please, make a little thing or just read the camera. Please. Oh, I just got my glasses. All right. Gentlemen, these are presenting you, council, life certificates. This one is certified that Daniel G. Fox has served 25 years as an active member of the Keyport, New Jersey Fire Department, is admitted and entitled to all the honors, benefits, and privileges of a life member. Witness our hands and the seal of the Borough of Keyport fixed this 20th day of February 2021, which is actually when we originally signed it. Congratulations. Christopher Bowling has served 25 years as an active member of the Keyport, New Jersey Fire Department, and is admitted and entitled to all the honors, benefits, and privileges of a life member. Witness our hands and seal of the Borough of Keyport this 2nd day of April, 2021.
Quick photo. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Just to be safe, I'm going to turn the flash on. And we're going to pretend like it's the first time we've done this. Okay. And 1, 2, 3. Here we go.
No flash.
Just to be safe, I doubt it's needed. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Still no flash. That's what happens when we wait on it. We wait on it, so it's good.
items, R 20221 through R 21321. We pulled, R 20521,
And 209.
and table, right, 205 and 209.
I motion to approve 202-21. I'm sorry, okay. With two motions approved, 204-21, 206-21 through 208-21, 210-21 through 213-21.
Second. Can I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes.
Councilmember Fotopoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
Yes.
And Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Next, we have the public hearing and adoption of ordinances. Before we move forward to this one, Councilmember Davidson asked at the last meeting if the residents of Osborne Church could be notified before the hearing, before they sent notices.
Not that I'm aware.
I did not know.
Was I supposed to send them?
No.
I know you're looking at
Would
them.
carry this
I
to the
didn't
next
get my stamps out.
Next we can make those notifications.
I just know that, and it's in the minutes that you had requested for that to be done, so I just wanted to make sure, I made a note in my packet to make sure that was done. So, would we have to renotice this?
I would defer to the attorney. My recommendation would be that it be carried to the hearing be carried to the next meeting so that we can provide notification to the individual property owners.
Can we
Now-
carry without notifying? I mean, without renoticing publicly? I mean, the letters, yes, but we have to notice in the newspaper again.
I believe you do.
Yes, you do.
So we need that to be go down as an action item by the council. So is there a motion to renotice this and notify the residents?
I'll make a motion to renotice and notify the residents.
Second.
Which residents in particular?
It was Church Street and Osborne residents.
Right, that's me.
Should do a roll call.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes. Yes.
Councilmember Fotopoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Can we just confirm whose role that would be to notify?
Michelle and I will coordinate that.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 13-21, designating multi-way stop intersections within the borough. Can you please read that by title, Michelle?
This ordinance amends Chapter 7 of the Borough Code entitled Traffic and Chapter 7A entitled Traffic Schedules to designate certain intersections within the Borough of Keyport as multi-way stop intersections.
Thank you very much. Can I please have a motion to open to the public for this item only on the agenda?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any members of the public have any comments or questions for this public hearing on 13-21? Mr. Graham?
Elmer J. Graham, Elmer J. Graham Jr., 22 St. Peter's Place. On ordinance 1321, just simple question, can you all explain what this means?
So it's, in that designated area of municipality, they're, pretty much all residential, and it's a way to have a traffic calming and, hopefully reduce situations that are commonly occurring at intersections because you cannot see appropriately with the amount of vehicles and households that, these homes were built with horse and buggy, as we know, and now households, some of them have 5 cars, then parked on the roadways, and the site triangle is just not what it used to be or what the roads were built for. So hopefully, if that particular area of the municipality, that all the intersections would be four-way stop, and one of them is a three-way because it's a one-way road. So it would hopefully be traffic calming and safer for residents.
Okay, and pretty good. If necessary, there's going to be police enforcement of this too, right? Definitely, okay, thank you.
I think this is a great initiative. I encourage you to pass this right away. I was sort of surprised why there wasn't any streets in the list on the west side of Broad. But, I assume the homework was done. The one thing is I encourage you to, once you pass this, to really press forward on the pedestrian safety improvement program for four-way stops at the corner of First and Atlantic and the corner of Church and First. And so to follow up right away. And let's get the pedestrian safety improvement program in place for those four-way stops in addition to these four-way stops. Thank you.
Thank you. I do believe there's going to be further conversation with the county about getting permission for county roads to see if they'll be open to having four-way stops.
That's fantastic.
Can't promise anything, but I believe the dialogue has been created. Correct, Joel?
Yes, we have started that process.
Any other members of the public on this ordinance public hearing? Can I have a motion to close to the public?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to adopt the ordinance?
Motion.
Oh, sorry. No,
No, you could do, I'm sorry, Mayor, I think, Robert, I think you do the motion and then,
either before or, but I don't know if there was a motion. Was there?
Motion.
second,
Okay, now we can have dialogue.
and then you do discussion.
All right, go ahead.
Whose responsibility, what you had just said about, the, discussion with the county, whose responsibility is it to talk to the county? Is it the engineer, the administrator?
We're developing jointly a list of items for traffic consideration, one of which included the resolution this evening on the 25 mile per hour. So we will be formulating that request to the county and have a sit down on, we expect it'll result in an on-site meeting.
Okay, is that Trevor and you?
Yes.
Okay.
I did also, I'm sorry, it would also include the chief as well.
Didn't mean to leave you out, Chief.
I did speak to traffic engineering after the last council meeting and just indicated that we're looking at the 25 mile an hour speed limit on all the county roads and just gave them a heads up on that. So I'll follow up with a letter for, if the resolution is approved, actually it was approved, a letter to the county with all the streets that were requesting the 25 mile an hour speed limit, as well as I have a number of correspondence from the county going back a couple of years, just with a couple of requests that we will also include in that letter and get a further dialogue on each of those items.
That's perfect. I was just about to ask about the request that the Environmental Commission made regarding this exact issue.
Is this is the public hearing for the stop signs, though.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So we gotta kind of bring it back a
Got mixed
little
up.
bit.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion from the governing body? Can I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes.
Councilmember Potopoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a motion authorizing the clerk to publish the ordinance as introduced in the Aspen Park Press for a public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Thank everyone for being open to that idea. I know it was a long time of requesting it and finally here, so thank you. And now, just for a matter of record, can you please make sure the sign order goes in for lots of red, shiny stop signs, and make sure we have enough feet to put the white bar on the intersecting intersections. Communications by consent. Right, sorry, we need a motion to table the next, ordinance. So communications by consent. I just have a question, for the fire commissioner on item number 1. It says, that, reservation, I'm assuming that means of the 3rd, or is it the 4th, and I don't know if that needs to be noted.
You know what, I'm not exactly positive,
Does that need to be noted in there, I'm just asking.
no, I don't think so. The records will, Owen will have it properly reflected on the list.
So is this,
Wait, what was it, I'm sorry, maybe I missed the question.
John Kovacs, is it the 3rd or the 4th, or the, does that need to be reflected in this communication?
I don't believe it needs to be reflected in it. I'm not positive exactly whether or not it's the 3rd or the 4th. That's why I said Mr. Owen will have this noted properly, exactly whether the 3rd or 4th is.
Do we want to table that one so that it's noted in the, we're receiving and oh no, it is for approval, so.
Okay, we'll might as well just table it to get a proper designation.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you were going to be like, oh, yes, I know, but if we don't.
I did know,
rather
yeah.
table it.
So,
Can I have a motion to table communication number 1?
point of order. Are we approving the application for membership and tabling, the resignation?
I think they go in conjunction.
I think they're two different documents.
One is an application for membership for Sean Walsh, and the other one is a notification of resignation of Mr. Kovac.
So this is one taking the place of.
Yeah, typically it's the replacement.
Oh, I understand.
You need the resignation before you get the.
Thank you.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Motion and a second,
Second.
roll call to table communication number 1 for clarification.
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes.
Councilmember Potapoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
In regards to item number 4, Jay, have you reviewed that with the department heads?
Yes.
Good? Any commentary from board members?
I just have one quick comment, just, as much as it'll be a fun event, the second to last line at the bottom of page 2, there's a little typo in there that we should probably correct. Just so there's no confusion. The event
From trunk to trunk?
Yeah, I don't think the DJ for the trunk or treat is ideal, you know, when you have the trunk or treat, so.
So do I have a motion to
Mayor?
approve? Second, no.
Please.
Motion.
Wait.
No, we have.
Sorry, was
Discussion.
there a second? I had asked, I didn't know there was
You
further.
can do discussion after the motions, but,
As
I was a member of the Green Team for some time, and I must say that I regret that JP is requesting not to be reappointed. He pretty much single-handedly kept that group together. It's one of the stronger groups in town that has actually produced some exciting and tangible results with regards to our bronze certification and coming close to our silver certification at times. There are a number of people in this room that have also been members of the Green Team that I'm sure share the regret. So I just wanted to note that it is regretful that he is resigning, but for good reason based on his letter. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else? Have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes.
Councilmember Potapoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
motion to approve September 21st, 2021 minutes.
Motion.
Second.
Oh,
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Okay, new business, flood damage prevention ordinance. Who wanted to talk about that?
Mayor, just by way of background, this ordinance, it's my understanding, the draft that is before the council was introduced in last year, and then due to, I guess primarily COVID, the hearing that had been scheduled had been held or carried, and then ultimately just at the end of the year, the introduced ordinance had died for lack of action at that point. This is bringing that same draft back to the council. I understand at that time, prior to my arrival last year, there was some discussion, but the ordinance did advance to the introduction stage. And we are in the process of continuing the borough's CRS review under the federal guidelines. Flood insurance is available to homeowners in a community by virtue of the community's participation. There are several requirements for the community that start with adopting a flood damage prevention ordinance. The borough does have such an ordinance on the books currently, but this is a modification based on changes that were mandated through FEMA, that is the parent agency of the federal flood insurance program. And this is essentially a model ordinance that is adopted by all communities that wish to participate. There is some area of modification and customization for the communities. The most significant question, I guess, that the previous council engaged were discussions regarding the freeboard requirement for what, if any, additional elevation is required above the base flood elevation. And it is my understanding also that there was some discussion last year regarding that, and a compromise was reached, at least among the council. So that is the process as to why this ordinance is back before the council, and this is the draft. Those members of the council that were here last year during those discussions may be able to supplement my comments, but that's where we are presently.
So is the suggestion to put this back on as an introduction?
Well, the idea was to bring it back to the council's attention, and I defer to the council's judgment as to if further discussion is needed, given the presence of new members of the governing body this year, but really whatever the governing body's pleasure is, as far as moving forward with this.
I have no issues moving forward with it.
Have we confirmed that this was, what was introduced, that there hasn't been any more updates from FEMA? Or is this the same, if this is the same one that was introduced at the beginning of 2020, has there been any changes in the last year plus?
I can review the model ordinance from the TDV website and just double check to make sure there's been no changes since then.
Can you circulate that answer to the full governing body? Because if there's no changes, then are you saying you're fine with this having an introduction at the next meeting?
No. I'm
No.
fine with it, yeah, sure.
But if there is changes, then can you circulate them?
Certainly.
Holiday tree lighting, KBC had a special meeting last week, and they, I was going to get an email requesting it, but I didn't, but they are asking, if Saturday, November 27th, is there any issues with them putting in, paperwork for the next meeting for November 27th, which is Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend, to do the tree lighting and holiday festivities?
Typically when they do it, right?
Last year was not that weekend, but prior to that, yes, it was.
The request is also for street closure and restaurants.
That is, right.
No, I'm just,
That will be when, for the date right now, is there any opposition? is discussion, again, I'll get something in writing, the special meeting was after the agenda closed for this, so these are just topics that you're not, no one's out there talking about stuff, but if there's a hard no, I'll tell them to stop those dialogues, to decorate the lamppost. They have not made a final determination yet or cost or voted on anything formal for, holiday lights. I think we all know that they won't be the snowflakes endeavor of last year, but potentially going back to putting the string lights back on the lamppost and maybe a wreath or something like that. So those final details will come forward to you, but is there any opposition to them looking into decorating the street lights again?
Is it a black lamp post?
Correct. Okay, unfinished business, cannabis ordinance. Ms. Elaine brought up, the part of adding districts. Is the committee, is that a universal agreement with the committee for an added district?
I thought that came out.
Well, I think it did. Mayor, I'll explain that. For some reason, I got in my head that when we did the master plan, we actually tracked the proposed land use changes that were in the master plan, which did change the names of some of the districts, more specifically I'm gonna screw this up. So it's the light industrial became limited, or do I have that backwards?
I think you're correct. I think light became limited.
Yeah, and limited became light in the master plan when we adopted it. And the same thing, we had a general waterfront commercial district, which was the north side of West Front. Turns out that we didn't change the names of it, and we didn't designate it, so that was more of a Scrivener's error typo than anything else.
Okay.
So, that, there is no new districts, and that would just have to be that, so we follow the master plan.
Okay, so, was there another meeting that you guys had? Because we had talked at the last meeting that we would put this on for an introduction, but I was told not to.
I guess we were hoping that if we put it on here for further discussion, that we could actually hear the rest of the council members' opinions and thoughts on cannabis prior to putting it on as an introduction, to make sure all bases are covered, prior to the introduction.
And there were some questions and.
Yeah, I have, London, I don't know if you know, I mean, I'm trying to research a lot of this as the best I can, but if the draft that we had said, 2 of each, of the types of establishments. My question is this: if we leave it that way, and let's say a grower or cultivator comes in to our industrial area, and I would imagine those are large facilities in general, if we then say that's really enough, and we don't change the ordinance, but it still says 2, are we putting ourselves in kind of an awkward situation if somebody then comes to us for a zoning letter to apply for a state license to be a cultivator in Keyport, because we said we'll allow 2, and we already have 1, if we then change our minds in any way, can we be held to the fact that in the ordinance we put that we would allow 2 if we don't have any, really good reason?
No, it's your choice. You can have the language that says up to 2, for example. So that would keep you from having to say mandatorily that you're going to do 2.
Okay, so that's all we have to do is just say up to?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
So we can put that in to apply to all the licenses individually, right, so there's no confusion.
Okay.
Well, it does say the maximum number of licenses shall be, so that would.
Shall be up to 2, or not to
Yeah.
exceed 2. Just to make it clear.
I'd rather more language in there, the better.
So where we putting the up to?
It would be 517 C4
The number of licenses up to?
shall be,
We're not to exceed.
or up to the maximum number in the.
Is there a preference or a recommendation to say
or not to exceed, they're asking.
Up to.
Up to as well.
I think Councilmember Check was asking, she was asking which one it should be. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah,
Um,
I know technically they mean the same thing, I'm just wondering what's better.
I mean, they're both conveying the same message. If you have a preference, I mean, it could be either one.
I prefer the up to.
So that's the only modification to what the proposed meeting?
Well, I don't, does anyone want to address Mr. Lane's other, comment?
What?
It was about being near residential districts.
Well, yeah, I thought that was, I think there was also a question, and again, there was a question amongst the subcommittee about whether or not we should put any distances in from any of the residential zones. And the other question, actually, there were two more. The distance from the churches or religious worship was another one, and then the third was, Kathleen, the wholesaler distributor question about whether I'm.
Oh, wholesaler and manufacturer, the CRC still hasn't come out with guidance on those two classes. So I didn't know if we're concerned or if it's okay to add those in at this point, or if we should wait for anything from the CRC, because they gave the guidelines on the other areas, but not those two.
I have a question. Can we say no to those two and then add them later, once we get the CRC guidance?
To not permit those at this time, you're
Correct.
saying?
And then permit them once we get the guidance. If it's a concern, I mean, I don't know what else they would come out with based on what I've seen on the league municipalities, but.
Could we just amend this if something does change the guidance?
Oh, yes, you'll be able to amend your ordinance.
Oh, okay, all right. I didn't know if we were, once.
You're not stuck with this once you,
We don't have the 5-year, we're stuck with it for 5 years once we
Well,
adopt.
we can't remove any of them.
We can't remove the zones,
but you can add to
but we
them.
can, remove the classes, but we can add the classes. So that would be why I would say, we can wait if we want on the two classes that are in question.
So are you asking to see, the language would just clearly say that at this time we're not allowing them, but we're waiting for additional information, or keep them off altogether?
I think my sense is that people won't, I don't know if there'd be an objection to waiting for, I don't know what the classes are, I think it's 1 and 2.
No,
Wholesaler
it's
and
wholesaler and distributor.
Wholesaler and distributor, so, if we were to, okay, so it's 3 and 4. So we could just not allow those two for the moment and then add them later, is that correct? Once we get the guidance? Like we did with like we did with all of the classes?
So if you're saying to prohibit them at this time, can we bring them back
Yes.
later? I want to look at that a little closer.
Okay. I mean, if it's the recommendation of the committee that we proceed with that, I'm okay with it. It's not something that, if we proceed by allowing those two, I think I'm okay with it. It's just that I don't want to stumble into this once, and then the CRC comes out with something significant that might make us do a wholesale change.
I doubt there's going to be that much of a change once the guidelines and regulations come out further.
Okay.
What they put out so far is probably going to be very close to what the final will be.
That's what I was thinking, right. Okay.
And also considering that the statutory limitations to wholesaler and distributor are, I mean, they're really just kind of, it's moving the product, moving and storing. So the manufacturing, the cultivating is more of an active, and retail and delivery is more active. The wholesaler distributor it's passive. It's really
That's great.
warehousing. So I can't imagine
Okay.
how.
And the total number that's gonna be available, we don't know, so even though you may allow it, in reality, you may not be able to give it because it may not be enough licenses.
Right, okay.
The discussion regarding, again, Mr. Lane's comment, we've discussed it as well, the 250 feet to the residential districts, which, you know, where I think a conversation with everybody should have at that, because if we consider that between the churches, the parks, and everything else, and then all the residential areas, including in the commercial district, what are we going to be left with?
Right.
That's my question. And I feel like we've covered a lot of it with the 250 we already have, like the schools, the churches.
The residential zone is not covered at all.
No, but I think I get what Lorianne saying, that if we were to add another 250 feet designation, what do we have left to even work with?
Where would we be able to put a dispensary? Yeah, and, you know, I think the 200, the sort of, for lack of a better term, cash and carry model that we're looking at here for the downtown district, I don't know if the 250 foot is,
It would cut off
everything.
actually, I mean, not everything, it would cut off the Main Street, a lot of Main Street, it would cut off the west front, Beers area. It would also cut off up on Broad, around Third, running along that side.
And
I
Broadway.
thought we had that wording in anyway.
Well, we were pretty limited on where we were gonna allow it.
Yeah.
I thought we said, West Front Street, Broad to Beers, Main Street from Broad, West Front to Barnes, just because that encompasses some commercial properties, or Main, I'm sorry, Main,
Yeah.
I'm making things up, Main. And then we also said
West front between Broad and Beers.
West Front between Broad and Beers, and then
And then
Broad between
West front
West Front
and Third.
and Third. So,
That probably does really X out the by a residential area when you're specifying that, like, by the residential districts,
Right.
anyway.
right.
So that's what I'm saying, I
Yeah.
feel like it's
It's,
de facto done already based on what's been broken down here already in the ordinance.
Pretty, right, it's pretty limited, and then if we don't have the space to do it there, then we always have the opportunity to, you know, put one on the highway. which-
If the other is 250 feet from residential, knocks out the entire highway.
That's at the entire highway.
Yeah. Because right behind, like that first row on the north side of 36 is residential, so if you take 250 feet, you're covering across 36 and.
I mean, you know, I think from an evidentiary perspective, or a precedence perspective, what is the benefit of 250 versus 150? Especially like I said, given the nature of or the model of that, you know, no consumption, and essentially you go in, you buy it, and you leave.
It's just part of the conversation that's been brought up, so.
I'm asking,
I don't-
and it's definitely, it's not necessarily rhetorical, but I'm wondering if there's that much of a difference between the two.
oh, where are you saying 150?
Yeah, I don't.
I read 150 in there too.
Wait,
That was
150 from a church.
From a
Yes.
church.
The question is 250 or something from a residential district.
Well, we would have to establish some sort of buffer, no? And, you know, I think 150,
Well, we delineated where it could be.
I just feel like we've established a buffer by establishing
In
these other.
Establishing where it
In
would be,
here,
that's
yes,
fine, I understand.
but out of the
Good.
highway,
It
I
can't
guess
go
is the.
outside.
That's a good point.
So it's not gonna be down on First Street, it won't be anywhere allowed except for where we clearly outlined.
Right, I didn't grab that 150 out of thin air, I was using what had been written for the churches and everything. Yes, I understand what you're saying, so,
Plus the pop-up one our next year.
yeah, well, they're not getting any business from me.
And I think the only other, there might be other conversation, but the other thing that we toggled with a few times is, do we wanna be clear where we allow only one retail within the downtown area and then the other one to the highway area, so we don't have two retail areas directly in the downtown area, and we can spread it out this way. It gives the opportunity for parking, which from the research Councilwoman McNamara has done, parking does seem to be kind of an issue with that, so maybe conversation should be had about thoughts on one in the downtown, one versus one in the highway to separate.
Which is fair, I think I've seen that in other communities where they've specified that way.
Councilwoman McNamara, had they, I thought I remember seeing something where they didn't designate like specific places where they can be separate, but you can't have one within a certain distance of another, so to speak.
That's pretty common in a lot of places
Okay,
too.
okay.
Yeah. But I think for us, I mean, when we look at, parking, if we say we're gonna allow two and they were both down here,
I'll forget it, yeah.
yeah.
And the concept is for people to come, go in and go out, so you wanna make it as easy as possible for them to go in and out.
So do we wanna change the language to designate one in the downtown areas that we wrote and then one in the highway area?
I think that's fair.
Anybody have any limitations to where it should be placed on the highway, being we designated locations within the downtown? Where highways kind of every front space?
Considering we don't have that much, we don't have that much highway
Exactly.
frontage, I didn't think that,
No, it's just fine, just
uh,
throwing it out.
no, I was saying, I don't know that we needed to.
I'm laughing to myself because I don't want people to think that the model we're talking about is the soup Nazi model, where you go in and you get it and you know, no more pot for you. It's more or less, it's not like that. I mean, we're not gonna dictate how they do that, but I don't think, right? But, it's cash and carry is the point, basically.
She giving a side eye, what's going on? You got a comment?
No, we met, I met with you guys, you know my feelings about, parking, traffic, all the other issues, so I had my meeting, I don't wanna hold you guys up anymore, I had my meeting with, the committee a couple times, we met, we've had, open conversations about it.
Has the committee's obviously taken that into account. Within the agreement.
I thought we addressed
Was
everything.
everything ended in that we discussed? Was there anything left out that was part of the discussion?
Nothing new had come up since the last time.
Okay, so all your concerns that we discussed and chatted about have been included in here?
Yeah.
Good.
And there wasn't side eye about it, just let you guys know.
Okay.
I'm just tired and a little uncomfortable in this chair, so, no side eye.
Oh, we put down the only other part I think we had from last time was about the curbside retail. Not permitted in the downtown.
So what can we introduce?
So, all the commentary of what you guys said tonight, if that could be circulated and just cleaned up to one document, and if it's going on for introduction, I'm going to ask, I know the normal process is for introduction on the agenda, but if it's finished up sooner than that, can you please have it, on the website, as early as possible, not just wait for the introduction.
Can I just ask Ms. London one more thing? So the documents that we need to support all of this, for example, the short zoning paperwork, that somebody would ask us for to submit for a state license, and all of our processes and paperwork, that all comes after that. That doesn't have to be part of this,
Correct, because
correct?
we still have to get more direction from CRC.
Okay.
Also, one thing that you didn't include, but you don't have to, but just, I don't know if you discussed it, micro businesses.
I had asked about, that to the extent that if we say that we're allowing two, do we need to differentiate about micro business or not? Or the two, if one could be a micro business, that means we only have one left, do they?
A micro business will be it's a different license, and different criteria is involved with the micro license, or micro business, I should say.
From the state level, so the state, like
And
the
from-
30-something cultivator that they're gonna issue, does not include micro businesses.
I'm not sure how they are doing it, but from your perspective, if you wanted to have as part of your ordinance that you will also be providing a license for micro businesses, because the criteria is gonna be different. It's, they have to meet certain qualifications. It's a smaller type of business, they can only grow and sell so much. It's much smaller than your average or your regular business. And it's not something you have to have, you could add it later, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
But right now, the way it's worded, if we say we're gonna allow two retailers and one that we decide to engage is a micro business, does that count as one of our two retailers in your eyes?
No.
No, oh, okay.
They're different businesses. One is a regular business, the license is retail, regular, and one would be a micro business.
So we would have to specify for each of the classes whether.
Or you may be able to do it generally. I'll see how some of the
Okay.
other ordinances handle micro businesses.
So that, it wouldn't mean that if it's a micro business and we allow two, and then we have two retail, we're gonna have a possibility of 4 retail and combined micro businesses in town.
Well, your number is what you decide it to be. And again, it may not be what the state is going to generally have. If you have 5 licenses, that's 5 different businesses. So one of those 5 may be a micro business. If that's how you want to have it.
So this is equivalent to like a pocket license for like.
It's a smaller business.
Right.
It's a license to create a smaller business. Instead of having a larger business, it's a micro business, smaller version.
But it's still considered one of the classes, so even though
Correct.
it's a micro, so if you say we're only allowed 3 class 5 retail, or 2 class 5 retail,
And one will be a micro business.
then leaving 1. So 2, if we're only allowing 2 class 5s, and the state says here's a class 5 micro business, for Keyport's purposes, that's one of the 2.
Correct.
Okay, so.
So then we have to change that word to be class 5 retailer 1, class 5 micro business 1?
I want to see how it's worded elsewhere.
I would question why it would need to be specified directly. I mean, it could be, anyway.
Well, the paperwork is going to be different. If someone comes in to the clerk's office and says, I would like to have a license for a micro business, they're going to get a different set of paperwork versus I want to have a regular license.
That I understand,
Yeah.
I did see that. But
Yeah.
the micro business distributor, retail, micro business retail takes up 1 slot. Say they're the first one that applies and they get it, and then, the regular retailer gets the other spot. We don't specify. Or two regular get it. I mean,
So,
we could, I'd like to take this offline because I don't wanna burden everybody else with it.
Well,
but
no,
I-
the wording needs to be in there so we can get this introduction ready, so I would rather clarify what you're
And
asking.
I'm going to check how others have done it.
I would defer, yeah, I mean, I would just defer.
I mean, could
Right,
we
we don't wanna
say-
prevent 2 micro businesses if it's gonna be like, they're the ones that are.
I just say there are 2 retail, they're either going to be a micro
Or
grocery or
regular,
regular, there's only
that's it.
2,
Doesn't matter.
doesn't matter.
Micro,
right,
that's
now they
why
count,
it's-
the question is, are we gonna cap it at the number we have, or are we gonna go beyond that?
I would keep it
I
at
would
the
keep
number.
it at 2.
I wouldn't want any more than, I think what we,
Exactly.
I think
2 at the most.
we're good, yeah. And some of them I would rather one.
I mean, is it, if we're concerned about, could it be 2 per class, of which there may be 2 micro businesses, like, is it even worth putting it in? So it's understood that, like, if you're a micro business, you get one of the 2, like, do you know what I'm saying, like, is it worth denoting that micro businesses count as one of the 2?
Or are you guys technically, just for clarification, saying hypothetically, they could be 4 in your back class, up to 2 for retail and up to 2 for micro, or do you still only want it to be 2?
I
I would personally like to stay at the number that we have,
I just,
or less.
I'm just making sure that, as I feel like that question just kept getting spun on like the numbers, so I wanna make sure that everyone understood that there was another option, but that's not what we're looking to do, correct? Cause you could go to 4 if you wanted to, but I don't know if the state's gonna give us 4. Right, but, okay.
No.
So for the members of the public that are here tonight, this has been a long, extensive, process throughout the year. We needed to wait for state guidance, and then we have a committee of 3 council members, who have worked extensively, with rewrites of this, ordinance, possibility. But the only way we can all have full dialogue together is an open public meeting. So why some people think that this has to be vetted out before a meeting, this is legally the only way that we could all cohesively have this conversation. So, just to clarify why that dialogue just took place.
And I'll get that information to the committee.
And may I throw a suggestion? 2 per class, this may include micro business.
If that's what Leslie comes up with, yes, based on previous, yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, but I just wanna reemphasize that I would like, when this is the final draft, so to speak, that it's not just put up, in the newspaper, that it's prominent on the front of the borough website, so that people can find it easily to review it even before the introduction. I know there'll still have to be a public hearing, but the more we can circulate this, I would appreciate that.
Is there any need to, I'm sorry to ask the notice question again, but to particularly notice any of the businesses or residents that fall within the area that we've defined in the ordinance so far, to give them an opportunity to, instead of coming across it, to actually know that this is gonna be coming up in the intro of the next meeting? Or is that covered?
Covered by public notice.
I mean, I know it has to also go to the planning board if we.
And once a facility, is going to come to fruition, it goes to the planning board. So
Well, I meant
those
the-
notices,
I meant
Even as the ordinance.
This has to go to planning board as well.
there's no requirement.
Ms. Lundy, can I also ask you, your office came up with a handy dandy map, can that be posted with the introduction?
You might remember I had someone in my office put this together, a map of the town showing all the areas of, and this was based on the first draft.
So once you finalize.
So we can update this.
But just make sure it says draft. Okay, next, on the agenda, unfinished business is the annual fire inspection. Do you have any updates on that?
I spoke with, Chief before the meeting, he's working, trying to get it scheduled, I have no additional information. He understands that it's a borough requirement. I believe that he is, looking to have it towards the end of October, obviously with the notice and permission at the next council meeting, but I've been in touch with him and I have told him that it's a requirement and he has to do it. So it's either going to be end of October or beginning of November.
Anything to bring to
Number 4.
Mayor, if I may, Council President Good had requested I provide a couple of quick updates, if I may. Just negotiation sessions with the union representing our DPW and clerical employees. There's a session scheduled for later this week. Electrical subcode official vacancy, the council may be aware that we filled that position on an interim basis, and we've finalized that selection process and expect to have that ready for our next meeting. And then the third item was property maintenance officer. Interviews have been conducted, and, but we have not concluded those interviews at this time.
Are we close? I mean, it's been a month.
Just about a month. I expect that we may have something for the next meeting, but it's not quite as close as the electrical is.
Who's conducting the interviews?
I am. First round.
Is Bob involved in that, Superintendent Kutchman?
No, this is a property maintenance.
Oh, sorry.
The construction official has been involved.
Yeah, I was just, that's.
With the.
How about the meeting with
First day of filming, yeah.
How about that update?
Last thing I saw was that they have not responded to our recent request for dates to meet.
Mayor, just one other item. I did check the model flood damage prevention ordinance, and there was a revision about a month ago, so I'm gonna have to review that, and I'll get, I guess, Jay an updated version of the new model ordinance, and we can take a look at it.
Can you circulate that so that everybody can review it as well?
Sure.
Mayor, I have a question about the lamppost decorations. That's okay? Are the American flags gonna be removed for the decorations?
I don't, supposedly, I don't have that right.
And they'll be replaced afterwards?
We'll see. I can't vouch for that.
Okay. If they are replaced, there's one that's missing right in front of Keyboard Coffee.
Yeah,
So,
There's several that are torn as well, and
Yep.
we definitely went through all of our surplus of them as well, so that's why I know it's a gold, and we all like them there, but they do, take a heavy beating because they catch on the tops of the
Yep.
lamps, so we may have to look into a different option. So I don't wanna go on record saying yes and that not being.
Understood.
Motion to open to the public for a max of 5 minutes per person, and I would encourage council members not to engage in dialogue, so that the members have their full 5 minutes if they need to.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Marla?
No dialogue. John Morella, 34 Broad Street, Keyport. Mayor, I'm going to ask the question to you, but I know it's going to have to be answered by Ms. London, I believe, because it's kind of illegal. Regarding the cannabis ordinance, the borough's going to pass an ordinance eventually, but don't we still fall under the guidelines of the state of New Jersey as far as the rules and regulations? I mean, there's going to be a big picture of what the state's going to allow and not allow. We're going to introduce an ordinance based on basically the rules and regulations and the enforcement of the ordinance. And my question is this: we could be back at the table at any time if the rules change, modifying our ordinance. So my question is our ordinance going to be adhered to, or do we fall under the guidelines of the state of New Jersey?
The state would always supersede anything that we have at the local level. The reason we had held off on doing any type of introduction to begin with is because the state, quote unquote, drug their feet with giving us the guidelines. So the guidelines that we come up with here are what we would want to envision to go even further along with what the state has. Because the state's, any state statute supersedes a local ordinance.
No, I understand that, and why I'm asking is because the state can change rules and regulations. I mean, the administration can change. Somebody might want leaner rules. Someone might want more, rules. Like the state may say, okay, now you know what, we've seen it in operation for 3 years. We're going to allow people that sell it to also let them deliver it to people that are confined, disabled, and that's where I think the borough should really, we got to stick some teeth in our ordinance too, I believe.
If I could answer that,
Sure.
Mayor. The ordinance draft is based on the initial rules and regulations that were issued by the CRC. And these will be good for a period of a year or so, while they promulgate the more permanent ones, which they anticipate will be very close to what they've already issued. So what is being done is closely aligned with what the state is saying should be done. So, I mean, the state could always change something going forward, but we're very close and in alignment with what the state has put out there so far.
Thank you.
Just to point out that one thing is they've given the municipalities, at least the CRC, pretty much wide range to say, the time, place, and manner. They've said, like generally, municipalities, you get to dictate the time, location, and place. Like, very sweet to the point. So, for them to come.
Okay. Mr. Delaney brought up about, under his report at the end, about the DPW, and clerical contracts. Do you know when the DPW contract expired?
They both expired 12/31 of last year.
And the property maintenance officer, have we had anybody apply actually? I mean, have we expanded our base of putting it out there? I know at the last meeting.
Yeah, we have received a number of applications and some interviews have been conducted, so the word is getting out.
Good. The last question I have, Mayor, or comment, is regarding now that the floodgates are fixed and both are in operation, I think we should complete the operation. We paid for them and they have solar lights. When the police department sticks the key in and you lower the gate, there's flashing lights like the stop signs that say, danger, flooding. Maybe if that was on there originally, that one wouldn't have got hit. It's just a thought, but we paid for it. The borough paid for that, and we have them in the borough. They should be put on. Thank you.
Mr. Wallen?
George Wallen, 54 Second Street. Mayor, where are we at with the dumpster closures?
I have not received any further communication.
Yeah, there's been no further action taken. That'll be an item for the new code enforcement officer to take a look at.
Well, we have an ordinance on record, all right? How hard is it to get the address, certified letter, with a copy of the ordinance, and it's done? Am I inventing the wheel here, or? Crickets.
I said no, sir. I answered you.
I'm sorry?
I did answer you. I said no, sir, it's not.
Well, you need to speak up then, because we can't hear you back here. All right. Upon your statement of that you were involved with this dumpster closure ordinance, I offered your record of who you contacted. The only one that showed up was 117 Cycle on the highway. Upon other information on those open requests, number 10 Chandler Street, it seemed to be an issue that you brought up. Upon opening that, I asked for the violations, I got those. I asked for,
You've got more than I did, then.
well, asked,
Which you saw I did.
well, maybe apply with Oprah. Anyway, I'm gonna turn you, these documents, Mayor. They were there 4 times in the last 2 years. One was issued a summons, which again, I don't understand because it was issued on the day they went there. And then with the 10 days, the summons was issued the same day. So you might want to look into that also. Can I hand these to you?
I'll ask for the same thing way you did then, maybe I'll get it.
Do you want these or no?
Sure, if you don't mind giving me
Yeah,
those.
I mean,
But
why,
I don't wanna take
why
your copies.
reprint them? No, I have copies, trust me.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was
Mr.
sneaking
Lane?
out.
Oh, man. He's not home.
Mr. Lane?
Michael Lane, I was delighted to hear that work has been started on a mapping of the areas where cannabis activity would be allowed. I assume I can open that map?
This was a map that I did.
And then we're going to post it with everything on the website, so, yes, I guess technically, I mean, but
Yeah.
it's not, it still needs to be modified
Um,
according to commentary from tonight.
I think the mapping is a key element to get out to the public.
I agree.
And the fact that it was stated, first of all, I never recommended 250 feet. I recommended 200 feet as setback because that's what's in the liquor license criteria for church and schools. But the fact that the statement was made that if we put in a setback requirement of 200 feet, there won't be any areas where we can activate cannabis, says to me, we're gonna be within 200 feet of residential district lots. And I think for the map, we really need to notify the residents that are within 200 feet, no matter where they are. Second, in all of our industrial zones in the borough are surrounded by residential lots. And our master plan says we want to protect and enhance the residential lots. So what's going to be the setback for a manufacturing operation, for a huge manufacturing building from a residential lot? And we really need to notify those residents that abut these industrial areas where we're going to allow this manufacturing that, I don't know, what's the setback, 25 feet? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Mr. Graham?
Elmer J. Graham Jr., 22 St. Peter's Place. Look, as far as the marijuana cannabis question goes, I don't smoke the wacky weed myself, but anyway, I was among those that voted for, the state of New Jersey residents voted for, overwhelmingly voted for legalization of it, and stuff like that. Now, my suggestion is, once the CRC and the state of New Jersey get their act together on this, I would just simply approve the sale of the marijuana and medicinal marijuana, just approve it for the smoke shops that let them sell it and stuff like that in our borough, and that's it. That way you won't have to worry about 250 feet of a residential distance and all that stuff like that, but that's my view. Now, as far as the law enforcement of this goes, again, I've urged it in the past, and I'll say it again. You have to be very careful with regard to law enforcement of this, because you should tie it to drunk driving and stuff like that. Give the police the power to enforce this and everything like that. That's on that subject. Now, as far as the Complete Streets Initiative, any new information on that?
I believe we did receive some final paper, documents from the engineering consulting firm. I don't know that that's been posted. It has been posted, so I guess it has been posted on the borough website.
Oh, okay.
But
All right.
nothing has moved forward as far as adoption.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Have a motion to close the public?
Second.
All in favor?
Mayor, has the design guide been posted as well?
Yes, all the final documents.
Great, thank you.